But right now, very happy to welcome to the show U.S. Senator Richard Blumenthal, representing the beautiful state of Connecticut, which is right close to here to New York, where I live. He serves on Committee on Judiciary, Homeland Security, and others. Senator Blumenthal, nice to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Dean. Great to be with you.
Sure, of course. Great to have you on. So you're on Homeland Security. I played a clip earlier in the show where Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem was asked by your colleague, Senator Maggie Hassan, what is habeas corpus? And I played the clip and she said habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right. And then Senator Hassan corrected her. What concerns me is I don't think this is a gaffe. I think this is how this administration, Stephen Miller and others view this, that somehow the president can suspend habeas corpus whenever he wants, even including affecting us as citizens. So what was your reaction to Secretary Noem?
That answer, Dean, was genuinely scary because it does reflect a mindset in this administration that the president has autocratic and far-reaching powers that the Constitution simply does not give him. And just so everybody understands, the right of habeas corpus is a core foundational right that began well before the existence of the United States of America. It's the right to be brought before some kind of judicial officer. In fact, I think the translation is roughly produce the body to determine whether somebody is rightly detained or imprisoned. And I've been on both sides of habeas corpus action. I've been a prosecutor, United States attorney, and also attorney general for the state of Connecticut when I've seen it used and used it myself. And I've also been a defense attorney and seen it used. So I really believe that you hit a very important point, that this administration has no respect for foundational constitutional rights, and for the Secretary of Homeland Security to think it's a right of the president is just so fundamentally mistaken that it's more than just an oversight or a slip of the tongue. It does reflect something deeper.
I agree with you. And it's in Article 1 for a reason. It's the right of Congress to deal with habeas corpus. But we're dealing with the administration where Donald Trump thinks he can sit in his office and rewrite the 14th Amendment. So this is all consistent with that. He thinks he can birthright citizenship. I want to talk about the corruption, and you're doing a great job on some resolutions, but I want to touch on weaponization. I've never seen an administration do what the Trump administration has done. Before you came on, we were reminding people from prosecuting a judge to signing executive orders to go after media outlets, go after law firms, go after people in his administration like Chris Krebs who wouldn't lie for him, so charge him. And the list goes on, where my concern is a chilling effect, but a weaponization of government that we have never seen openly like this. What's your reaction, Senator?
It's a weaponization of power to intimidate and threaten, and once again, to augment and concentrate power in the president. And it is obviously done for personal reasons. This administration works on vanity and vengeance. But what's really, again, scary is the attacks on the rule of law through the personal assault on individuals like judges, threatening to impeach them, lawyers, intimidating them into, in effect, signing away millions of dollars worth in pro bono time, but also a lock on who they can represent and not represent, intimidation of the media through lawsuits brought against major companies, and we've seen some of them fold, just like the law firms have folded, and of course against universities. And if you go back, I listen sometimes to Tim Snyder, who's a professor at Yale, who has written a book, it's bestseller, on tyranny, 20 lessons about tyranny in the 20th century. Lesson number 1 is, do not obey in advance. That's what we've seen from some of the universities, law firms, and others. But the intimidation of judges is particularly alarming because their physical safety is at risk, but also their emotional and professional security. And so I think the onslaught on the rule of law undermines all of our rights. And you're absolutely correct to pointed out, and also to elevate it, because we do need to be aware, do not obey in advance.
I agree. And I've quoted Timothy Snyder so often on the show, I should pay him a fee because I've read from his book on air. His book is now back in the New York Times bestseller list, which is tells something about the times. Look at, Richard Nixon and John Dean infamously had the enemies list, but they kept that as a secret. Like, we learned about that later in the investigation. Donald Trump does this publicly. And do you think the goal is to cause people to obey in advance, to cause this chilling effect and self-censorship so that we essentially people surrender or just bite their tongue and hope to bide out their time once Trump is in office?
The point about his doing all of this in the open, I think, is really revelatory, because I think he is doing it to change the awareness of people, to lower the bar about what is acceptable behavior. And we see it in the corruption area where, the cryptocurrency, hundreds of millions of dollars into his pocket, out in the open, rewarding people who buy his meme coin with access, dinner in the White House, in effect, putting the White House up for sale. But it's all in the open. And likewise, his intimidation and threats, all done openly, I think, to scare everyone into thinking that it's the norm. And he is seeking to normalize this standard of behavior so we can kind of go to sleep and fail to assert our constitutional rights. And if you look at what's happened in India, in Poland, in Turkey, in other countries around the world, Venezuela, and of course, countries that are dominated by Russia, the winnowing away of rights takes place gradually and then all of a sudden. So it's a phenomenon to our century, not just the 20th century.
I'm talking about U.S. Senator Richard Blumenthal. On Friday, I just had on, once again, Professor Stephen Levitsky from Harvard, who co-wrote How Democracies Die. I had another author on, Marcel Dersis from Germany, about a month ago on how do you end tyranny. And this is the light reading that we're kind of living through right now. Now, I want to talk about you had a resolution last week and this week on corruption. And one big thing is Donald Trump's big dinner in 2 nights at his golf course. And I just saw an article a short time ago. Now you can buy the Trump coin. The top person who's got the most holding is a person named Justin Sun, a Chinese-born crypto entrepreneur who was sued by the SEC in 2023, is negotiating a deal. And he's posting online, I hold the most money. I can't wait for the dinner. So can you share a little bit about, first of all, how shocking this is that the President of the United States is doing a for-profit event while in the White House? He's not doing it there. He's doing it at the golf course. He's going to profit in his pocket, and he's selling access to the White House right in front of us.
Dean, if you wrote a novel and you describe these facts, your publisher would say, that's so unrealistic. No one's going to believe it. Sorry, go back and rewrite it so that someone would actually credit it. And it is really unbelievable. Think about what the founders would have said about accepting money from foreign powers for his real estate deals and for his crypto schemes, the meme coin, World Liberty Financial, which are 2 separate operations. In fact, they did think of it. Lo and behold, they actually have a clause in the Constitution that forbids what are called emoluments. And the definition of emolument is a benefit or payment from a foreign power, plenipotentiary, or whatever. I can't produce the exact language, but in essence, it's what Donald Trump is doing. And so we're going to be going to the floor of the United States Senate and pointing out again and again and again on the eve of his dinner, where he's rewarding those meme coin buyers and others who are trying to go to this dinner simply so that he knows they're there and they don't need to whisper to him. He can look them in the eye, and in effect, he is asking him, what can I do for you? And here's what he's done for Justin Sun, I fear. Justin Sun had a case with the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, He was under investigation. He bought some of these meme coins. He invested in Trump's scheme. Lo and behold, a few weeks later, there are negotiations for a settlement. And then Justin Sun, as you just pointed out so well, is boasting about it now. Again, all out in the open. They can't just be quiet about this kind of corruption. They seem to want to boast about it. And I really hope the American people are going to get fed up, sick and fed up with the kind of corruption they're seeing in real time involving real people. And a lot of people will say, I guess, well, what's the harm to me? But Donald Trump is, in fact, also taking money from tens of thousands of investors who have seen that investment plummet in value. Everyday Americans are losing real money, while Donald Trump's buddies, Justin Sun, maybe among them, are profiting, or they're getting the results of this influence. So, there are no kinds of schemes like this that don't exact a price on someone.
And you mentioned the emoluments clause, and we've had conversation on this show about the royal family in Qatar wanting to give Donald Trump a $400 million plane. And what's kind of remarkable is the emoluments clause bars gifts from kings, princes, or foreign countries, and he got all three wrapped into one with the plane from the Qatari families: a king, a prince, and a foreign country. And I think by doing it open, there's this sense like it can't be criminal, it can't be wrong. He's always gotten away with that. I remember on the phone call with the Georgia Secretary of State, well, I knew lawyers were there, so I wasn't pressuring him to overturn the election, which we knew he was. I think people hear this stuff, and you mentioned World Liberty Financial, and Trump's sons made a deal for $2 billion. It's another crypto coin, but it's from the sovereign fund of a country in the Gulf. Why are there not laws already that prevent this? Like, what we have the Constitution, but how could this all be legal for a president to just pocket this money and literally profit off his position in the White House right in front of us?
And it's not legal. But the question is, who's going to enforce it? Well, of course, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, is Trump sycophant and acolyte. She's there, so she will do his bidding. She's not the people's lawyer. She's his lawyer. She won't prosecute it. And the emoluments clause is not self-enforcing in the sense that, it's a clause in the Constitution that the founders probably, maybe somewhat naively, felt people would obey, rulers would obey. I tried to enforce the emoluments clause in a lawsuit that I brought during the first Trump administration, and the courts ruled that I personally, Richard Blumenthal, United States Senator, and more than 200 of my colleagues who joined me did not have standing to bring. So the question is, who will prosecute this case if the Department of Justice won't uphold justice? You're absolutely right. It has to be enforced. But I think this corruption is so basic that it should be enforced as a violation of other statutes. Maybe it can be brought by some kind of state prosecutor, and an ingenious theory, because as you know, this United States Supreme Court has ruled that the president can't be prosecuted for what he does while he's in the White House. An absolute gaping hole in law enforcement for this country that this Supreme Court established. So I think that enforcement really is an issue here.
And you have a resolution. You tried to have a vote last week on denouncing Donald Trump's corruption and calling it out. They wouldn't let a vote on it. I know you're going to have another one. Are you hopeful? I mean, do any Republicans say in private, I won't ask their names, does any in private go like, come on, like this is ridiculous? Or are they all lockstep? Like, what can you share with us about the Senate?
They're lockstep in public. In private, there's a lot of hand wringing and brow furrowing and whispered, gosh, this looks bad. But they're unwilling to do it in public, even to have the backbone to raise questions about it. Now, the $400 million plane from Qatar has prompted some Republicans to raise questions more explicitly. But what's needed here is some action, not just whispered reservations.
Yeah, I mean, I even played a clip of Ted Cruz stunning us by criticizing it. And even Senator Kennedy, I think, even said something about, I wouldn't take a plane. So, last thing, I mean, look, the judiciary right now is the one that's saving us from the abyss of tyranny, to be honest with you. I mean, because in Congress, Republicans have the House and the Senate, and they don't have the backbone to hold him at all uh, to be accountable in any way. Do you feel confident the judiciary is going to preserve this republic? And what can we do, the average person, to try to help that?
That's the question of the day, Dean. Number one, will the courts rule the right way and hold Trump accountable? Clearly, some are doing it. The courts have been the most reliable bulwark so far in preserving the rule of law. And going back to habeas corpus, in fact, they've upheld some habeas corpus petitions in real time. Judges have issued orders saying, in effect, you're violating the Constitution. Now, what will happen on appeal is another issue. On appeal to the courts of appeal, one ruled the wrong way just within the past few days, and then before the United States Supreme Court. And then the other question is, will Donald Trump obey court orders? And I have a prediction, it's worth what you're paying for it, that this Supreme Court, as unpredictable as it's been, as much as it has supported Republican right-wing extremist views, for example, the Dobbs decision, I think will have really no patience, no tolerance for a chief executive who disobeys its orders. If the President of the United States disobeys the Supreme Court, I think it'll be a crisis, a constitutional crisis, but I think it will so anger the Supreme Court, it will take action. And it may come to that outcome, but I think the president may know the limits of his own court's tolerance and step back and actually follow court orders.
And I hope that as well, Senator. I mean, we had the 7-2 decision a few days ago on the idea of due process and making sure there's real due process for people who are going to be deported. But at the same time, when I'm praying for Chief Justice Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett to save us, I'm like, oh boy, we are in tight things. I mean, Alito and Thomas, forget it. But, there's a few others there. But Senator Blumenthal, thank you so much for being on. And I hope you come back on. It's great to chat with you. You're doing a great job in the Senate. It's very nice to have you on the show.
Well, you're doing a great job. I'd love to come back on.
Sure.
Thank you. Take care.